Welcome to the March 17th, 2021 Parma City School District Board of Education work session. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please. Mr. Nucio.
Mrs. Bratz.
Present.
Mrs. Carpus.
Present.
Mr. Price. Mr. Ruda.
Present.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes, present. Unless there is an objection, we'll dispense of the reading of the special meeting notice. Dr. Smiley, can you please confirm that the public portion of this meeting is currently being live streamed?
Yes, it is.
Can you please monitor the live streaming throughout the public portion of this meeting? If there is a problem, please speak up immediately so that the technical difficulty can be addressed.
Yes, we will.
Thank you. Just a reminder, community members are welcome to attend the Board of Education work sessions. However, there is not an opportunity to participate. And Dr. Smiley, I now invite you to continue sharing, building up future information with the board.
Sure. Thank you, and thank you again to the board for coming in on an unscheduled time, or typically unscheduled time. Just before I get into the Building Our Future piece, I wanted to mention that a number of us, Robert Hoon and Christy Kruzek and I, attended today a summit hosted by the governor about Ukrainian refugees. We continue to interact with different leaders in the community and offer our support. We also attended a meeting at the Parma Heights Baptist Church 2 Monday nights ago. So we are ready and able and certainly eager to help families who may resettle in Parma. Certainly we have Ukrainian Village, which is potentially a large center of Ukrainian population that will immigrate here. Right now there is no clear plan. There are no clear announcements, so to speak. In fact, as we were there was a text that one family was relocating to Brook Park, and it was newsworthy. So there just is no clear announcement at this point. But we have space. We have translation services, although we can certainly use more. That's actually one of our larger concerns. We have staff that are very able to mobilize. I was very impressed by how our staff mobilized for actually the fire at St. Anthony of Padua. That it's not necessarily it's not a Parma school. It's not affiliated with us, but it's in our community, and our staff really stepped up very dramatically to donate supplies and different needs that they had as they relocated. So we have folks that are able to assist and support, and we continue to be ready. And in the meantime, we support our Ukrainian families and offer them the services that we can and that they need. So more news to come when we know things.
Thank you.
Then into Building Our Future. So we are halfway through March Madness, right? We can call this our own March Madness, as we scrambled at the end of February and learned that we had a deadline of March 31st to hand in a goal to the state. We'll start though with reminding you of our district goals: improving student achievement, improving transparency throughout our district. I think that if you look back through our process with a monitor that went to every household, with a survey opportunity and a link to an online survey, I think we've even seen on Facebook where some folks have made comments about they don't want our input, and then somebody right underneath says they just asked for your input. Where were you? So we really have again tried to involve the community to the extent possible. And practicing fiscal responsibility, clearly we try to be as clear about numbers and prices and enrollment as we possibly can. We've tried to make staffing efficiency really a centerpiece of what we've presented to you. And so all three of those goals really are at the forefront of our mind always, but certainly tonight and throughout this process. Tonight's goal is singular, and I just want to really focus in on that. I mean, there's so much to talk about. What about, in between? Are we going to consolidate before we build? Are we really going forward with the bond issue in November? And tonight we really have to put all of that to the side, because the only thing we have to do between now and March 31st is make a decision on what the master plan is that we want to give to the state. The rest will come. We have April, we have May, we have June. We wouldn't really have to decide in terms of a ballot until July, so that we can have 2 board meetings to get that on in early August. And certainly the consolidation points, that'll be the centerpiece of April's meetings with Building Our Future committees. We will again have work sessions dedicated to what can a consolidation plan into currently standing buildings look like. Oh, great. Awesome. That can help. And then moving forward, again, there's time. So my request tonight is to really focus specifically on What do we want to do between now and March 31st? So this is midway through our March Madness. We started March 2nd with our work session, the preview meeting 3. We had those meetings last week. We reviewed survey data. We allowed the committee to provide final input, and that's a large part of the data that we'll share with you this evening. Tonight's the work session. I look forward to seeing each of you tomorrow to have more of a conversation. My hope is that we wow you tonight, and our conversations are about 2 to 3 minutes long, and pat each other on the back and go about our way. But if not, we're ready to talk and to explain and to talk through things. Ultimately, we hope to have a 5-0 vote in terms of what a master plan can look like. If necessary, if we still need to hash this out, we can certainly do so next week, March 23rd. And again, that would be dependent upon how tonight goes and then conversations into tomorrow go. But the vote is at a regularly scheduled board meeting, and we will vote on a master plan on March 31st. So this is the actual results. We had 45 responses, and that was a decent number of folks that continue to come. We had approximately, I think, 80 sign up. Some folks never showed up. Some people missed a meeting here or there. But in the end, we had 45 responses to the series of questions we asked. These were, again, the goal had been to have a very educated base of our community. And I think we did a nice job of really educating them in terms of what our dollars and cents were, what educational considerations were, what buildings can look like, what traffic patterns can look like. I think we were pretty thorough in that process. So the first question was, of the 3 models, and at the time we did have still the 411 as a potential. Of the 3 models, what was your most electable? And you always want to look to the blue. The blue was first place. The orange was second, and the yellowish color was third. You see a 421 being the most electable according to the 45 responses that we received. In terms of efficiency, you actually had 411, which makes sense. People heard us on that. Fewer buildings that we're operating and constructing, the less variables that you're navigating in terms of plowing driveways and maintaining properties. And again, larger is always more efficient. The fewer buildings are always more efficient. And so that reflects, I think, the work that we did with the committee throughout the process. We also asked about academic value. You see 421 emerging as the strength here. 4.2 not far behind. 4.11 a little bit further behind. And again, I think we did a thorough job during the presentations of talking about the academic value of being able to not cut classes. Literally just before I came in here, Mrs. Strofko and I were having a conversation about some classes that just won't be able to run. Counting 2 is an example of a course we can't run at 2 of our high schools next year, and we will run it at 1. And we don't have the numbers. We can't sustain those class sizes at 6 and 7 and 8 students. We would not have those cut classes. We would not have those limitations to student choices if we were one campus. And again, can we talk about streaming down the road? We can. It's actually part of what we're talking about with our association. But streaming still will be a second place finish and not as meaningful in quality of an education as having a teacher in the classroom. We then asked about cultural value. In all honesty, I was surprised by this. I thought cultural value would be 4.2, would be the selection in terms of the first choice of our committee because of some of the things we talked about, tutoring and the shadowing that can happen and the advanced classes that students can walk down the hall and take. So 4.21 was again the choice there. So if you look, 4.21 really emerged in everything except for efficient as a winner in terms of what folks thought was the best plan. We then had people rank, and here was the surprise. So all through the 4, we had 4.21 merge at the top. But when we got to the bottom, and we said, so what's your final preference? 4.2 somehow usurped 4.21, which was surprising to us. So when we looked at these results, we said, okay, let's take these results, let's take 4.11 out. Because 4.11 clearly is more of a distant third. In all honesty, the senior leadership team, we had sort of felt the movement, people's conversations, our own thoughts about what could be best and really best for all 3 of our communities. And 4.21 and 4.2 we thought were really the 2 top runners. And the committee kind of bore that out in their results. So we took that out, we took 4.11 out, and then asked again the question of the committee. which of the following options do you more prefer for the future of the footprint of the district? Now the 411 we thought was really sort of more of a distant third. 421 had 59%, and 42 had 41%. In all transparency, and again, we've been transparent throughout the process, that was only 22 responses. So ultimately that's a 13-9 vote, but you do have a clear preference among the folks that voted and have participated in the series. Just a couple other considerations that I wanted to present in terms of the data and then sort of the vision piece. We had 3 different surveys. We had the community survey, our parent survey, and then our staff survey. By far, the largest response was 945 respondents from the community. And I just want, as we go through this conversation, to remind you of what I thought was probably the most compelling data piece that came from any of those surveys, because you saw a clear preference. 411, which at the time was the model that we presented, we hadn't gotten to 421 yet. Had really the only place where you had more votes at a yes, at a 5, than no votes. Every other one had more negative in their 4s and 5s than in their 1s and 2s. The 6-2, and I know we changed that to 4-2, but you have to sort of worry about the residue that's out there from the 2-campus conversation before. The 6-2 was really clearly skewed toward the negative there. So that's 945 responses. It's obviously a sliver of what we'll vote, but it was, to me, as we looked at all of the data that came in, I thought that those were most compelling. So again, just in terms of price, and I'd said a couple dollars or a couple cents, I wanted to be very clear as we move forward. The 421 came to an expense of 7.77 mils. Again, being honest and transparent, these are based upon prices that we know right now from OCC projections. That's $22.66 per month. The 4.2 is slightly less expensive. On $100,000 a home, it's at 70 cents different. So you're at $21.96. Again, there's logic there. If you're going to build 7 buildings instead of 6, you're going to have a differential in the price. So I wanted to be really clear, because I had just in the past said, yeah, it's a couple cents, and it's actually 70-cent difference in the 2 models between 421 and 4.2. This is really what it all came down to, and it still comes down to. Now, we can get into some of the finer details about how we would do things, or what specifically a wing would look like, or a pod would look like, but ultimately it comes down to this. What do you believe is the better set of advantages? A one-campus advantage, you're one high school, you benefit from having all in. You're going to have all of your teaching credentials, all of the classes you can possibly offer, all of the amenities that you can possibly create. It's all in. It's in one location. Unified high school experience, unifying our communities. Obviously that's an ambitious hope, but it's one that I think one high school can accomplish. Maximizing course and program offerings. Again, that's that all-in concept. No travel for CTE students. Now, you might say, well, it's not a big deal, they travel now, but I will tell you again that the clear preference of our teachers, career tech teachers, our career tech administration, and our career tech students is we won't have to give up a period to travel. Campus, though, again, being transparent, also has advantages. And it has advantages that we would be happy to rally behind if that's the way the board goes. One transition in K-12 instead of 2. You don't have 3 different schools you're going to attend in your K-12 experience. You have 2. And that does help families, and that is easier to transition. Peer mentorships and tutoring, and that's again why I was surprised by the cultural piece being a higher result in the 4-2-1, because I thought from a cultural standpoint, I think these are strengths. I think being able to march kids down the hall and have your seniors tutoring your 6th graders or giving motivational speeches to them, I think this is an advantage. Clearly an advantage, or an asset I should say. We can do those things with 4-2-1, and I don't want to undersell that. We can do it. We can bus kids, and we can have different programs that go to different locations and do different presentations. It's just harder. It's one more thing to plan for. A campus advantage, easier for the advancement of coursework for middle school students. Your 8th graders can now walk down the hallway and they can swipe into the high school wing of a building, and they can take a class that otherwise they couldn't have taken. So that's easier. They, right now, have to give up a period, or there would have to be some type of streaming arrangement. So it is easier in a campus. Ease of shadowing students and programs for middle school students. Again, we talked about 6th graders coming and sitting in cars and saying, oh, I want to be part of this one day. So from a cultural standpoint, that synergy between your middle school and your high school really grows if they're in the same place. And then again, advantages to 3, and this is why, we're going to come out with a clear recommendation, because quite frankly, that's what you asked us to do. But we would be very pleased to motivate behind either one of these models. So advantages to all 3, our staffing is going to be more efficient, we've accomplished that. We wanted to shrink the footprint by 50%. Both of these models do that. And so we're very excited about that. Improved traffic patterns, all of the campuses that we looked at have very clear areas in which we can do staging for buses better. We can have better drop-off areas. We can be more considerate of the fact that we're not all walking campuses anymore. That's a large part of how this district was built, and now this would allow us to be different from that. Consistent elementary programming, 4-4-4-4 lets us, or each corner I should say, lets us be consistent. We asked for that. We talked about how we can't have 6 different STEM labs. We can't have 6 different land labs. This allows us to be consistent from the elementary standpoint. All those things said, that's the transparent, that's the nuts and bolts. But now, the last 10 minutes or so are going to be being transparent here. It's going to be clear advocacy. And this is your senior leadership team advocating for one campus. And we have to be very clear in that we understand what our role is. Our role is to make a recommendation to the board. Whether the board accepts that or not, there's not going to be any hard feelings, there's not going to be any animosity. We've said very clearly that both plans we can be very clearly behind and we can be excited about. There's advantages to both. But we are going to strongly recommend one campus in terms of a high school, and it will be for the following reasons that we're going to walk through. First, if you turn to research, you're not going to get a clear answer on what size should high school be. You're going to see some that say you should be between 300 and 500. We were never going to be 300 to 500. Some say you should be between 600 and 900. We were never going to be between 600 and 900. Neither one of those, or really any of them, we're going to have that option as a high school. You have some that say, size doesn't really make all that much of a difference. What really happens is what happens with your programming and with your staffing and how do you really make sure kids transition well, and how do you make sure that from a cultural standpoint kids don't get lost. And in all honesty, that's what this piece of research would say. And this came from Darlingham and Ross and Milliken in 2007. Anybody can Google it. But essentially they say the influences of size appear to be mediated by other features of school organizations. So if you're large, if you're 3,000 kids, what you do in that space and what you do with your personnel can mitigate that fact that, yeah, you're going to see the 300 to 500 kid high schools emerge as the best for kids. You'll see that. But again, that wasn't in play anyway. Important variables that appear to influence high school outcomes for different groups include organizational structures. And that's everything we've talked about. And you're going to see some of our examples that we've thought through what one campus can look like. And again, we're advocating for one, but we can also easily advocate for 2 if that's the way the board wants. It's our preference to go one campus. And so that's why you're going to see the following slides. This is a clip from 1954 in Cleveland Magazine about the queen of high schools, Parma Senior High. Our request to you tonight is to trust your team, trust the processes we have in place, trust that we can one more time become the focal point of Northeast Ohio for the programs, the offerings, the architecture that we offer to our kids in our community. This was us in 1954. Our argument is that we can again be that in 2026. We are extremely confident and could be very excited to have the largest, most efficient, and yet best for kids high school in Northeast Ohio, just as we did in the 50s. So these are just projections. Please understand that we haven't sat down with architects. Those will be systems where we build synergy between our teachers and our counselors and our kids and our families and our community. But you've got to start somewhere. And to really try to paint a vision of what one can look like, we took a floor plan out of a large high school. This is the first floor. You have your athletic wing over here. In the middle of the front, you'd have your welcome area and centralized offices. So your attendance, your athletics, these are centralized needs. Your main principal, your head campus principal would be in the middle. C would be obviously your arts and auditorium. Here's where we start to get into that vision piece that's really compelling for us and why we think one campus is really going to allow us to put all of our assets in that campus. Your STEM facilities can go right here, and guess what? That's on the first floor for a reason. That's a partnership with the community. We want to call these community learning centers, and then we want to have the realization that they indeed are. So when we talk about a STEM facility, we're talking about meeting with Tri-C, and we've already had these conversations with them to get us into advisory groups. And we connect with our community, and we connect with the experts that are available to us, and they help us design labs that are not just for our kids, but for anybody. Letter E, dining and kitchen facilities, and then letter F, what we're really excited to, is the ability to create Parma Early College. And Parma Early College is the centerpiece for all of your AP students, all of your AP classes, all of your College Credit Plus, right here. And again, it's available from the first floor. So any type of niche course that a kid's coming in for, because he still has to go to Tri-C for these classes, it's right here, it's right accessible. Separate entrances, separate doorways, separate facilities, essentially separate classrooms anyway. A separate wing for our highest achievers. Feeds right from Page, right into Parma Early College. On the second floor, now you get to see a little bit more about how you're going to build some structure. G is obviously just the second floor of your athletic wings. H, your 11th and 12th grade humanities are up here. This is where you can build some classrooms that are larger, maybe with some steps, where you have sort of a Socratic method of instruction in those upper level humanities course, and you center them in one place. Your arts, again, that's the second floor of that. Here's where we get excited because, again, from a cultural standpoint and from a how can a facility really increase student achievement and improve student behavior, right here. Your 9th and 10th grade wings, you can put your teams right here. This stays 9th grade. This is a cafeteria area that you can have specifically for 9th grade. Over here, here's your 10th grade area. Your offices, your home liaisons, your counselors, your unit principal, your grade level principal, they're all right here, right built there. And then you still have some room for your elective courses here. So that's just the potential vision of what one campus can look like. Two campuses can have some of those features. I can tell you that a Parma Early College isn't going to exist on two campuses because you're taking the certifications of your staff and you're splitting it differently. You're just not going to have enough of a need. One high school can be uniquely compelling. Two high schools can be functional and positive, and we will make them everything we can be. But they will not be the iconic Northeastern Ohio secondary campus that we believe we want to recreate from the queen of high schools that existed in 1954. Then, you walk a little bit up a covered canopy sidewalk, and you get into our career tech. This is our Parma Tech Community Learning Center. All of our programs, 17 programs, right there. And it's not just for our kids, because we're going to be benefiting from OFCC funding and benefiting from community funding, so we're going to share those with our community. We'll be open to our kids till 4 o'clock, but then after that, we can run any courses out of there that we can find. We want to have that synergy with our community. We want to be available to them. Just sort of dividing that out, our arts and communication can have a wing, auto and construction, culinary and cosmetology, health and medical, just how we could kind of divide it up. Here's our key piece. We talked about this when we talked about Parma Senior High, still having a couple of sort of client-based programs. Our culinary and cos can be right here. So picture the ability for somebody to come in and they've got to get their car worked on. They drop their car off in the back, and they walk through, or they walk around, and they come and they have a bite to eat. Culinary, they get their hair done at cos, and now their car is done. That type of concentration of 17 programs gives us unlimited possibilities, not just for our kids, but also for our community. So those are just some pieces of what a one campus can look like. And again, if your decision ends up being two, we still have the videos. We can go back. We can say, hey, take a look. This has been an iconic district in Northeast Ohio. One high school gets us to that iconic status again. It gets us to that all-in model where it all comes together. It's the flagship right here on 54th, where we again are creating programs and structures and facilities that are the envy of Northeast Ohio. This isn't a pipe dream. You've seen what we can do. You've seen your team in action. You've seen how we've worked everyone through this process. We're hoping that you'll trust us to do that in this process as well, in this decision as well. Questions?
Well, very good, as usual, presented very nicely. So, if I'm hearing this correctly, I'm hearing you guys prefer one model over the other, and I'm assuming, or presuming, rather than assuming, that the 4-2-1 model would be preferable.
I'm glad I wasn't subtle, sir.
Yeah, you were not. Whereas both of these offer such a great, I'm not really having any questions, as they pop up here in a minute.
Sure.
Both offer such great possibilities for education. Size-wise, I went to a very small high school. Actually, I was at a big high school and went to a small high school to graduate. And I felt that the smaller school was more personable. You know, teachers knew who everybody was. It was nice. And I was only there for a short period of time. The larger high school, you see, if you were a typical student, you could easily get lost. I mean, you get a tendency to fall through the cracks a little more. My wife was a Valley Forge graduate and was in a big, huge high school. That was over 900 kids in her class. And I know that's not even remotely close anymore. So I just don't know really off the top of my head where to go here. I think with my heart and educational mind that 2 campuses and 2 high schools are good. The other part of my educational mind says 1 high school is outstanding. Athletically, that might be pretty good, although we're going to cut some possibilities for some kids. But then again, that make them more competitive. So, like I said, I really don't have any questions. I did have those comments.
The only, and I certainly appreciate it, and I think you're echoing a lot of what, a lot of people are kind of, there's advantages on both. The one piece I would say is, that's really why we've designed that 9th and 10th grade, really to be, on the second floor so that you could really have, you're walking not real far, that you can still have that team concept in the 9th grade, where, the kids are going to share the same 5 teachers throughout the day. Then they move over to the 10th grade wing. Quite frankly, one of the concepts that you can build is looping. So in terms of relationships, you take 6 periods that a teacher teaches, 3 of them can be, 9th grade, what do we teach in 9th grade history? US? 9th grade US history, 10th grade we go to world. All right. I'm not the curriculum director. But you could literally schedule it so that they're teaching 9th and 10th grade classes so that they have the people 2 years in a row. We agree completely that that's often the perception and quite frankly some people's experiences. But we also think that by creating these wings and then really creatively scheduling, we can maximize that relationship piece because we don't, that can't be the knock against 3,000 is that kids get lost.
It's huge. Well, that's all I got for at the moment. Unless something pops up in a little bit, so I'll open up to Amanda.
Thanks.
Anybody, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Okay, I have a couple of questions. My first question is, how did you define culture in the survey? Where, so people just, whatever their interpretation of culture was? Okay. So I got a couple things. First, and I've said this before and I've shared it with board members, in my opinion, if you had the slide up there that had the advantages of all 3 and this one, the campus advantages, I firmly, wholeheartedly believe that touches more students than the 1 high school advantages will ever touch. However, first of all, who came up with the Queen? Who found the article? Never cease to amaze me. Well played. I firmly believe that we can take can touch more kids and find a way to move the campus advantages to the one high school advantages, I don't think it goes the other way.
I would 100% agree with you.
That being said, you're in trouble now because every single bit of that potential layout I'm in love with, and I know this is not the goal for tonight. I can't ask the community to pay for that right now. But that is the future of our district. That is where we have, in my opinion, that's where we have to go. And I did not think that that was going to be. This is another land lab moment for me. Tiffany got it last time. And Carl got it with the building maintenance staff the time before that. It's hitting in different ways, and that has, in my opinion, that has to be the way we go for our kids. And now I hope that we can all get there, but I guess too, in going forward, I'm gonna need to see some ideas on how we're gonna move the campus advantages for me over to one high school advantages. What's it look like? And then I guess a primary thing is going to be, because of geographically our size, we have to have busing for one high school.
Yeah.
That has to be it, and it has to be on paper, and it has to be this, not a promise, because our community's been promised a lot of things.
It needs to be on paper.
Yeah, it has to be a real thing. But
I agree 100% in that certainly two of these, we can absolutely recreate these in one high school. I mean, it's a day then. It's a shadow day. It's a day where you're bringing your high school kids. The one piece, and I don't want to say that this could touch more kids, because I think you'd have to look at how many kids sign up for County 2, et cetera, but this piece, you can never recreate on campus. You can't take a teacher who is certified to teach some upper level college credit English class and teleport that teacher into this campus. You just can't, you're not gonna run the course. Or if you are, you're gonna build a travel period, or again, you're streaming. I mean, I think in terms of coursework and course opportunities, it's right here, and that's what you can't recreate. You can't recreate no travel, but at the same time, you also,
you can't recreate the
can't
top
create
one.
one transition.
Although at the one Building Our Futures meeting, I think Mrs. Stropko and I were talking about it, that you'll have 4 very unique elementary schools that can really, truly embrace their identity, I guess. That, if one's a fine arts and they do theater, I mean, there's things that we can do to a transition might not be so bad when they're looking at, I don't know how we do that. That's why you guys have many more degrees than us. But that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Go ahead, Mark.
She's collecting.
I've spent days preparing to argue with you because I was convinced that you were going to recommend the 2 high school model, but I actually agree with you on this thing. So everything that I planned on saying, I don't really need to say because we agree on that. I just did want to go over.
We've always agreed on everything, Mark.
When you said that you wanted to do a poll, but we couldn't do that, we kind of did with the survey. That kind of was a poll. So, and I went over this thing just so that how the community feels about 1 versus 2 high schools. 3, in any kind of poll, 3 would be like a swing voter. There'd be somebody in the middle that really has no opinion. 1 and 2 are the negatives, 4 and 5 are the positives. Well, with the 1 high school model, you're at 50.2% positive, and a 34% negative with only 15% swing. But on a 2 high school model, you're at 31% positive, 47% negative, and 21% swing. So you'd have to convince a lot of people that they need to vote for 2 as opposed to 1. When you did the staff, which you don't have on here, but the staff actually had a 55.4% positive of a 1 high school model. And they were kind of closer to 47%. And then when you did the parents, that was 31 to 33. And that's basically within the margin of error of any poll, so that's kind of a wash. So I agree. To me, I thought the argument should be whether or not it would be one middle school or two, and that would be centered around, do we want fifth grade in the middle school, or do we want them in the elementary school, and what would traffic look like for one versus two, and the busing and all that. So, I mean, I agree with Amanda that probably might not be the year to do it, but definitely knowing the vision of the district is good, and, you know, you're worried about the size. We fall right in between Mason and Mentor. Both of those have one thing in common. They have one high school. One high school.
Geographically, we're bigger.
Huh?
Geographically, we're bigger.
I understand that, but I'm saying, student population-wise, you know, people are always concerned, well, you know, a big high school, what is that gonna do with so many kids in it? Well, you have almost the same number of kids in Mentor, and you have more kids in Mason, and we were down there, we heard the students' testimonies on how well they loved all the opportunities and everything, and it didn't feel like it was this giant campus that nobody cared about them and they got lost. That just wasn't their experience, and I think we can do the same thing here.
I don't doubt that we have the ability to do that, and I'm not changing I spoke my heart, but in concerns, because I'm not saying that it doesn't come with concerns, is that Steve and I sat in a classroom yesterday to watch a presentation, and 4, 5 kids came in late, 2 of which walked to school. We don't have, and I am not saying our kids can't do it. I'm saying that it is going to be our job to make sure that they have the resources they need to get to school, to be there in time, and to have any support that they need. That's the caveat. Not that they can't do it, but it's going to be our job to make sure that they can. And that's the one thing that geographically we're bigger. And if we don't have busing, or we don't have the staff to make sure that these kids are brought in, this is where kids fall through the cracks. This is where kids were constantly late. All of a sudden, it's the end of their junior year, and they can't possibly get enough credits to college. So that's where it comes to your team and our building principals and that, to make sure that doesn't happen. That's the one place that still scares me. But I think that the thought of any kid not succeeding in our district will always scare me. We'll hold you to that one as that, but that's kind of my thought, that we're not apples to apples to them. And also the surveys, there's not enough people on those surveys to be relevant, or not relevant, but statistically,
I
you know what
would
I'm trying
disagree
to
with that.
say.
I mean, you only get 20% voter turnout and 1,000 people responding. That's a pretty decent, I mean, you look at some national polls only have 1,500 people in it, and that's shaping public policy.
But
on
it shouldn't,
15.
because it's
I understand it, should, but I'm just saying.
The only piece I would add is had we been able to do the survey, honestly, it was gonna be a $20,000 expense to get 300 people.
I
And then I had one other point that I was going to make.
Sorry.
That's
Sorry.
okay. In the last thing, you had said how, you know, why we eliminated 3-2-2 and 6-2, we got down to the 4-2. And one of the things on that slide was the 4-2 honors concentration of resources at elementary, not at the high school level. And that's the thing, is if we're going to concentrate our resources to give everybody the best opportunity they can, we shouldn't only do it at one level of their education. It should be from kindergarten all the way through 12. So we shouldn't have to compromise those advantages in high school and middle school just because we feel that that's what, you know, we can get past, or that's a little bit cheaper. I think if you're going to do it right, and make sure that you're doing, you know,
So,
giving them the best opportunity.
I have a quick question for you, and it had to do with who we spoke with at Mason. Do you remember how many students we spoke to?
Yeah, it was only
3,000.
about a dozen.
Yeah, it was 5.
Yeah.
Basically 5.
Well, I meant, we talked to some as we walked through
And
the
they
hallways
really
and stuff.
taught much to the kids. So, I mean, I don't know if that gave us really a great representation of what was going on there.
Well, the one girl
But
who
no,
did say that she came from
I'm just saying, I don't know that it gave us, it's kind of like our survey here. You know, we're saying it's like 300 people, but it was 5 people. I'm not battling for either one right at this moment. I was just letting you know That's part of my thought process.
I would tend to agree that you can cherry pick on anything.
Yeah, and I think that's what they did.
But-
Well, the one that stuck out in my
That's where
mind
I'm
was the girl that came from a district that was like ours, I think she was from Chicago or something, where she said there was all these little tiny schools, and they would go from school to school to school to school, and when she came into this community, it was completely different than anything she had ever known, but she wouldn't trade it for the world. It is the.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, that's the one that stuck in my
was-
mind, because she came from
What
a
stuck in
district
my
like
mind was
ours.
that gentleman's class, where we praised the kid for spouting off something, and then a girl spoke up and goes, well, you just got that script 5 minutes ago. And so how planned was that script? And that kind of irked me, that we were down there trying to get some sincere information out of these kids, and how is that working? And how does it work for you? And I'm sure it's very good. I mean, I think, and I have every bit of confidence in our leadership team to make either one of these schools work, either plans. I have no doubt that can be done, and that it would be done well. I have that utmost confidence in you guys. But, I don't know, I haven't really decided. I'm still digesting on the info. I tried to get here early and read this, and it was kind of small.
I do have
But,
a question. I think it's like 2 slides from here.
That's the only slide that was.
Listen, no.
Two forward?
Forward. Okay, right there. Is that a field house? Is A field house?
No.
Looks like a gymnasium.
No, it's connected. Yeah, it's a gym area.
But is
So
it
here's
just
the
one gym?
hallway.
Or is this more than what is in the OFCC, the 7.77?
It is one gym, and that's all we would get. If we wanted to do a locally funded initiative, we could.
So if we wanted to do a true field house,
That's on.
that would be, okay. I wasn't sure with like the 2-story.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be argumentative.
No, that's okay.
I was just thinking about that.
Debate is
when you
good.
Brought it up.
There's a lot to think about here, clearly, and I think about the numbers that we have back. I appreciate so much the time and effort and thought and consideration that all those people that came to our committee meetings put in, because they obviously care greatly about this district to be involved in that. So I'm thrilled about that. I am happy about that 900 and some that returned from the monitor
Absolutely.
or online. I think those are great feedback issues. But I find this to be such a complex set of circumstances that we're trying to consider here. The educational piece, and sadly, there are a lot of practical pieces. We talked about the fact that we have 3 communities, We're not starting like Mason, out in the middle of a cornfield, a farmer that gave acres and acres and acres. They started on their plan 30 years ago with considerations of how to build their community, not just their school district. And we have a lot of things that we have to consider that aren't just, unfortunately, the educational piece. And that's absolutely, I know where all of us are at. I know we are all there. It's just the practical parts of it. I'm still working on a lot of that, and I know whatever decision we make, we are going to be able to make a great improvement in the educational services that we have for our children, what we're able to do, the opportunities in most cases will be greatly improved, and will be an exciting improvement for the entire community. But, some of the minutia that I don't think we spent a lot of time on, quite frankly, in our meetings, and some of that would be overwhelming to people, I think, and some of it, there's just not time to go into all the nitty-gritty details of everything. But there's a lot that I think about all the time, and I circle back all the time to how can we educate our children best. But we have a lot of other things that we have to think about and how to get to that place. And we have to bus kids, they can't learn if they're not in school. We've got to make sure that that's part of our entire plan, getting kids in there appropriately. I quite frankly, I will tell you that I also worry about some of the maybe lost opportunities for kids when they're in a much bigger environment. You know, some of that activity stuff that kids are involved in. You know, you got one lead in a play, you've got one student director, you've got one, student government president, and hopefully we can help enhance a lot of those opportunities in some ways. But the fact is, we have 3 basketball teams. You only have 12 kids on a basketball team. 3 times now, we go to 1, that's reduced. And I don't suggest in any way that that should be our focus, but I don't want us to say either that, at least my value system isn't in having the most fabulous football team in Northeast Ohio or the very best baseball team. I'm more concerned about the more children having those opportunities, instead of going from 3 full teams down to 1 full team. I'm just thinking about all those sorts of things that make up the high school experience for children. And for some kids, we all know, those are the kinds of things that keep them in school and keep them engaged and keep them involved in their education as well. So I'm just trying to put together all the things. I look at Parma High School as being the perfect location if we go to 1 high school. How great is that? If you did start with an empty map and picked the middle of the district, you're pretty much there. That's pretty exciting. I think that's a great thing in terms of all 3 of our communities. But I think part of me says, how the heck do you get there? You're in the middle of a housing neighborhood. And I think the access on, main roads, I think about that. I know that we can design it with better egress and access and all that sort of stuff. But I'm still thinking in my head, you're still in the middle of a neighborhood. And can we get through State Road Park, or Veterans Memorial, sorry, I'm old. But,
if I could interject just a couple pieces.
Yeah, sure.
The piece on the opportunity, I think we tried early on to talk about how we could create different opportunities for kids too. So yeah, you're not gonna have 3 basketball teams, but now you're gonna have a bowling team, you're gonna have a lacrosse team, or you're gonna have, we had a girls wrestling for next year. The reality is, we mightily struggle to field competitive freshman and JV level teams at all. And we've canceled freshman football at times. And so, to me, having a quality freshman program, so right now, let's take 45 kids on a varsity team. Divide that by 12, you get about 12 kids at each level. If you brought them all together, now we have 36 freshmen, and you have a really good freshman team that feeds into a really good JV team, instead of just having a couple of the kids who didn't play on Friday night, now they're dressing for a Saturday morning game. I mean, I just can't see this as a lost opportunity for kids. The access, I'll give you that. I mean, we need to engage the city. If this is the plan that we go ahead with, and we have good relationships with the city, we have great collaboration with the recreation departments. We do need to have those conversations sooner or later about, how can we use State Road Park, because I think that's a key piece. But we're not talking about a 3-mile stretch through. We're talking about 15 feet that would connect that State Road, the Park Road. Once we knock down Parkview, now you have access from 3 sides actually. So that piece, I agree with you. I just, in terms of the 3 starting shortstop, I've heard these arguments.
I know, and I don't mean to dwell on that. We're in, I'm most committed to academic opportunities for kids. I think that's the business that we're in and that we need to be most committed to. I just know that for a lot of kids, it makes a huge difference, if they have those other opportunities. So it's just part of what I'm still struggling with. All of the minutiae, the financing of everything is, we've talked, it's a concern to me. I'm just struggling with all of the different pieces and parts. And while I value all the input we've had, I think a lot of people don't have all those pieces and parts in their thoughts and in their minds when they're responding to a survey out of the Monitor, or, you know, even the community meetings that we had, you know. I think that was pretty much geared to a one high school kind of thing. I think we kind of talked more about that than other situations, or what the pros and cons were more. And part of that, and I'm not throwing stones at you guys, did a fabulous job at all of that. I'm just thrilled at all of that. It's just, gosh, there's a lot. And I don't know if a lot of people thought about some of the different parts when they answered, you know, so
One of the pieces that I think we could get sooner than later is, because I've heard all of you guys, and Mrs. Carson might have talked most about it, in terms of the distance. Because when we looked at two campuses, the distance from Ridge and Brook Park, which would be your divider, to either the Normandy or Valley Forge campus was pretty substantial. So I don't know that we're going to lose anything distance-wise, but we can actually measure those. I guess potentially a good way to leave this tonight is if folks could, and I know it's not a long time for you, but if you could think about questions that you have that you want us to still look at and that haven't been answered, like the distance, for instance. Maybe that's the conversation tomorrow, and then we've got 3 days to turn it around next week, which is, you know, completely fine. I don't know. I mean, I feel like Steve and Cindy, you really aren't ready to cast like, yes, this is my vote. So I feel like we need to honor that additional work session, I imagine. Go ahead.
So, as Cindy was talking, I thought about something that Steve and I went, when I started on the board, I had a very, very, very clear mindset that I wanted to raise Parma City School District's GPA minimum for athletics. And I was gung-ho on this. And I had never had a conversation with a teacher about this before until Mr. Vaughn. And he told me, there are some kids that getting there and staying in those sports is huge. In the spirit of looking at and just thinking kind of outside the box, as I'm touring colleges with Frankie, a lot of the coaches there's somebody in the athletic department, in the football program, say that their job is to keep, not saying that we can afford this with every sport, but their job is to keep these kids on track academically and help them grow academically and not just get by, but be better students and learners. And I wonder if if things like that are goals that we can accomplish by doing this, that can help us get over certain things. Because like I said, I still have concerns about losing the kids getting lost, that kind of thing. But if we're at one place and we have more comprehensive, you know, coaching staff, maybe getting kids, bringing up their academics and stuff, so we don't have I want, like Haley, I think I just texted you guys, Haley got the scholarship last night. That's an amazing award. A lot of our kids don't get it though. And maybe when we consolidate, it was just something that came in as we were talking, but that's one problem that I hadn't even looked at in consolidation. But as you were talking about like more opportunities for kids and stuff, I wonder if more problems like that are going to arise that we can solve by doing this and increase opportunities for kids academically while still athletic functions. But I agree with, we've talked about the lost opportunities, but then, you know, I just hope that when we have these conversations, no matter where we end up, everything that we say that is promised, you know, intramurals, freshmen, all those things, we hold true to our word. Because if we're making empty promises to the community or to students, that's not going to get us anywhere, you know, 6 years down the road.
Well, I will say, in all honesty, holding true to our word becomes easier if we're maintaining one high school campus. In high school, you saw it, it was one of the first charts we showed, it was $1.8 million to close the high school. So it is more expensive to operate two high schools, and therefore more likely that we can maintain a very robust set of offerings if we're at one. It just is.
Now, what do you see as the projection of our population as we move forward in year-wise?
Projections were 3,000.
Well, as a whole, as a district, so we're like at 9,000.
We're at 9,300, I think, when we looked
So-
at that. So again, we used 26,
Project out
27.
to-
It was about 8,700, 86.
87. So we're
High
losing,
86.
we're losing kids.
300.
Losing kids, yeah, slowly. I mean, it's sort of,
Right.
you're not falling off the cliff, but yeah, it's a general decline.
But that's one of the things. But I don't know, as I sit here and listen to what you just said and listen to what your concerns were and everything, I don't know that we really miss opportunities as much as I think people think. When you have a school that size, maybe you have more than one program. I get that, one lead to play or one basketball team. I just don't know that we lose those opportunities. But we also have the ability to keep kids on the straight and narrow, so to speak, in athletic programs, maybe easier. I don't know. I don't know. That's something I have to mull over and think about.
In my estimation, and I hate to be this simplistic, but this is what drove me in education in the first place. Relationships change kids. There isn't necessarily a structure that's perfect, but there are structures that can lend themselves to better relationships. And the one high school campus, because we can maintain, all of our support in one system, and all of that, it's that all-in mentality. All of your adults are there. That's every adult. So you're not splitting resources because you got to have two. It becomes better for adults to have those relationships with kids. And again, that was just off the top of my head. And you can have teaming in your 9th grade wing, so you're going amongst 5 people, and you've got team planning, and that's almost a middle school concept taken into the 9th grade. Then you can have your teachers teach half freshman, half sophomore classes, so they can loop with the kids. And now that they've got them 2 years in a row, I mean, you want to talk about relationships and power. That's easier to do when you have more variables to work with and manipulate. You can't really do that when you're talking about the small. Can you just talk? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but talk about your frustration today with world languages and.
Yeah, and if I could share this honestly, we are at the point right now. Let's take 8th grade out of the 3 high schools. Like we have small school district problems in a large district, and world language is an example. We have literally 8 kids in French 3, we have 11 in French 4, we have 2 in AP French 5. So essentially, we have a teacher in each of our schools that could possibly have 3 preps in one class, and those
in
kids
one class,
all
not 3 preps total.
together.
They're all
And so
together
when I
because
say
of the
it's-
small number.
It's almost like a small district problem because we're seeing the numbers go down with the kids, and it's not just like this in our world language, it's like this in our art classes, like our higher level art classes. We have the same problem. We have choirs of 35. Like you go to some of our area districts, our choirs are not 35 students. So we're splitting up the talent. And I know we're talking about sports, but there's sometimes when we can't even get enough kids on the team.
Right. Well, that was one of the things I was going to ask, but you answered it already. It was about, I know there was a high school team that canceled games, JV games and freshman games. And it's just, that school's always been that.
They were upperclassmen.
Numbers for freshmen and JV at all?
There were upperclassmen the past few years that would go and play on Saturday because they didn't have enough kids on the JV team. I was driving them there just because they needed bodies. It just,
Valley Forge doesn't have I can speak to football because I
Yeah,
know.
Forge doesn't have active.
Yeah, Valley Forge doesn't have a hockey team. Valley Forge doesn't have, there's a lot of things our kids don't have. And one of the things, and I think I've said this to you before, the relationship piece, when we toured those high schools, there was a couple where the offices were so far away from the students. And we had commented and kind of about that. And then when we looked at the next slide where you have the offices are right there in that wing, one of the common things that I think everybody here has probably heard it is about how we have to monitor our bathrooms and the kids' bathroom usage and the bathroom doors being locked. The relationships and the trust that I think we could build with kids being, hi Mrs., I'm gonna use McCullough because she just popped it, hi Mrs. McCullough, as they're headed to the bathroom, makes it a lot harder to go in the bathroom and vape. Makes it a lot harder when you know somebody you trust and value is standing, 10 feet outside at their office saying hi to students. And I think that's one of the things that I hope, and this is where I say that our kids, not that our kids can't do it, it's that it's our job to give those supports, is that it'll be our job to make sure that all of those things are met as we go into eventually a design process. But I think that that's how we, some of those things that I think people might be, and myself included before, struggled with was, if we can't handle it now, how would we handle it then? Well, it's logistically that, the bathroom's upstairs at the other end of Valley Forge hallway. Come on, I was a student there. I know which bathroom you go to if you want to, meet your friends and be late to class. You know what they are. So I think that that's another place where we could improve. I don't know what exactly that's improving. I don't know what the right word is.
Proximity.
Yeah, improve
Yeah, I
proximity.
mean, you've got your home liaison, all of your high school home liaisons now go to the same location, so maybe you have two upstairs, one for the 9th, one for the 10th, because that's where the kids are, more needy, so to speak. And you put another one down in the central area, because that's where, your juniors and seniors are going to be taking more of your niche classes on the first floor. It's just an example, but I think as we go ahead, and again, you can create some of that in a campus. I mean, I want to be transparent there. You just can't create that scheduling that we're talking about. You can still have the problems that she faced all day today in staffing. Dr. Schneider as well.
How about the science? I'm sorry. The
Science
sciences,
is-
they've been running pretty well?
No,
PPs,
nothing,
no?
all of our departments.
Also.
Another example is we have pathways for career and tech. We have media technology and information tech right now, where we're in single digits at all 3 high schools. And we can't offer that course, because we're not gonna let a course run with 5 kids. We can't do that, we can't afford to do that. And this is the reality, so it's not just art, it's not just, those are
Well, that's
heavy
what
ones.
I was trying to
But
realize.
we're feeling it everywhere. Like an AP class over at Parma, we don't have enough kids, so we can't offer it. Accounting too, Dr. Smilek mentioned that. I mean, if you guys look at J right now, that's your 9th grade area. So I think sometimes we think about our kids going throughout this entire large high school. Like our 9th graders would just be in that little area, including dining, and would only go out for a couple specials. So that mixing of kids is not gonna happen.
But your team's right there. I mean, those classrooms.
I mean,
are
that's
allocated.
like your small school within this larger school.
I know that's.
I just wanted to point that out.
No, that's a good point, because that was one of the questions off my
Yeah.
end, that we can make small schools into big schools.
You can
That
make
feel
anything
anyway,
feel
so
small.
that teachers know the kids, so that administration knows the kids. I hate to draw my own experience, but I remember walking past somebody one time when I was in high school early, and I said hi to him because I'd met him before, and he didn't recognize who I was. Adam was a little squirrely kid, but it was, well, hey, Mr. Smith, and he was like, hey, and took off. Meanwhile, I had a conversation with him 3 days before about church or something, and he just totally didn't remember. Now, was that his fault, or is that just because it was such a big school and I didn't know him, or he didn't remember?
I mean,
but I'm like the concept. Well, what I'm driving at is, if you make those smaller communities in the school, that's not going to happen.
And again, I think it comes back to, this was my favorite piece of research. You can find some more, and some of them will say, test scores and student behavior are better with small schools. Some of them will say it isn't. So you've got some on either side. But the predominant mantra is that, achievement increases with smaller schools. Again, I want to emphasize, not 1,500 kid high schools like we're talking about anyway. So we're way above what we're talking about anyway. But right here, we can mediate by the features of the school organizations, by the organizational structures. I mean, it isn't 3,000. It's 450 freshmen or 500 freshmen right here, 500 10th graders right here. So now you've got your base. Now you know what you sort of want to do. And now you're probably going to spend a lot more time on the first floor, because now you've got, you know, your humanities there, you've got, oh, this is the wrong. Where's first floor? This is it. Okay, so now you've got your STEM classes, so your upper level sciences are down here. You keep your upper level sciences here because that's where your community is going to come into, and the weekends are going to be open to STEM facilities there. You've got your arts wing where you're getting into your higher level, maybe 2 periods of band. I mean, I'm not promising any of those things, but you know, that's, you keep your 9th and 10th grade because that's where kids go wrong, right? Algebra 1 tends to be the predominant determinant of whether kids are going to succeed or not. Well, all those critical need all that social support, they all happen right within that small wing. And then the piece that we still haven't talked too much about is career tech's all in one place. The synergy of that. The folks coming in off of 54th or Longwood or wherever we decide to, however we decide to lay it out, and you know, they're having lunch right there and their hair done, and I know that already happens to some degree, but not, I think, to, you know, if you really had a corner and you had, you know, Parma Cafe right above that corner and it's all glass and you can see in and it's really that restaurant type experience. And then I drop my car off in the back as well because, you know, dropping into the auto technology. 17 programs under one roof, nobody does that. And yet, I think sometimes I almost talk too much about, you know, how the community can get excited because I always have that political hat on. But it's still best for kids too, and they're not traveling. So, you know, ask any career tech kid, would you rather be on one campus and not have to do this back and forth? 90% of them are going to say yes.
That is not just best for kids though. That's best for people's tax bills, because what people don't realize is in most our surrounding school districts, they're paying an additional tax to go out to the JVSs where it's in-house for us.
Great point.
So when folks are comparing their tax bills apples to apples. The other thing I was going to say, and this is not a dig at one of the high schools that we looked at. One of the high schools that we looked at, a big one, talked about how, I can't remember what course, his teachers weren't teaching. He walked into like 5 math classes maybe, and only one kid was doing what the essential question on the board was. Do you remember what I'm talking about? I've seen us over the last several years put in instructional leaders in place so that we don't get that. And I think that we did those big school potential issues, we handled that in just because of our district size. And I think that's one of the things that I don't foresee having that same kind of problem. Do you remember what I'm talking about? How he was telling us, like, he went and visited classrooms, only one classroom.
Yeah.
One of them, but like,
Not to say it out loud.
we have a lot better infrastructure in place to make sure that our staff is, you know, we're not losing kids. Kids aren't falling through the cracks because they're, you know, the teachers are lacking leadership or direction from their end. I think we've put the funnel in place really well that way. And now I just think we're talking about physical buildings. But again, I get stuck on the 2026 number.
I have every confidence that however this develops, we're going to do a fantastic job of serving children. And I'm really, really excited about that, of course. And you know, those of us that grew up in the district and went here when the schools were giant, and education has changed. We know better now. We know the kinds of things to build into the building that serves kids so they don't get lost, so they don't get, you know, have problems that they would have in a giant fishbowl, you know. Just dividing it up with these different kinds of arrangements, of course, will make a huge difference. So I'm not worried so much about all of that. You know, that doesn't make me hesitate in terms of what I, you know, envision for the opportunities and possibilities that will come. So that's really exciting. And even the distance, you know, like you said, I'm not concerned about the distance, because no matter where or what plan we go to, and you can put a bunch of others up there that we considered and got rid of, we're gonna have to transport kids. We need to do that.
Right.
Somebody's gonna be far away, no matter what we do. We already have that. You know, there's kids from the corner of Seven Hills down off of Rockside by Cuyahoga Heights that go to Normandy, and it's, you know, if you're in the car taking your kid, it's at least 15 minutes, you know?
Absolutely.
So we've already got that issue. There's kids way down, like you said, or 130th in Brook Park, for
Yeah.
crying out loud. They have to get to Valley Forge, and that's a hike and a half. So that's one of the things, we have what we have. We're not starting in the middle of a giant field with the opportunity to build everything from scratch. We're going to do the best we can to make what we have the very best it can be. And so that's, you know, that's exciting. So, you know, and I think over and over, as I told you, I go to bed more nights than not thinking about this and wake up thinking about it first thing in the morning, and I'm dreaming about it in between. You know, it's just on my mind all the time. And I'm so disappointed because I thought in early January I'd be, you know, pretty good by April. And now I gotta be pretty good with my decision
Still by
thoughts. Well, it's a month ahead though than what I thought it was gonna have to be, because I've been concerned that I still have all these feelings and thoughts about it. But, what's my point in all of that? I guess I'm highly confident that we can do a really good job serving kids here, you know? And the old saying, I guess, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good, or however that goes, you know? Yeah, we can't have perfect, you know, everything, whatever we think about in terms of possibilities or different plans, everything's gonna have a little something that's better than the other. Everything's gonna have a little something that's, you know, maybe not as great in some areas as the other. So we can't think about having necessarily everything be absolutely perfect and then lose sight of all the great, really good things that can still happen no matter what. So that's where I'm just still.
Yeah, I mean, I think
struggle.
what I've said a couple times, if there was one perfect plan, we would have done it decades ago.
Yeah, there you go.
I agree with you. It's a very, very difficult, very weighty issue. We've tried to give it the recommendation, but we respect the job of the board. And I think tomorrow you come in with questions and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I have a quick question. You probably can work on it today. You might be able to hand it to me in 5 seconds, I don't know. But staff, a typical 9th grade group of classes. I mean, how many classes were we taking? We're taking 8 classes? 25 kids a class?
Yeah, I mean, it's an 8-period day, right? So 25, yeah, I mean, your team would be essentially 5. And then they'd go, you know, they'd have lunch for 6, they'd have maybe potentially 2 electives, potentially.
So how many teachers are we talking for 9th grade for 500 kids? How many teachers is that?
I mean,
going to be?
I don't know.
But that's one set up. You probably could get it for tomorrow. I wasn't sure.
And the other thing was, I having spent some time in high school, I don't think anybody would want to teach all freshmen. They probably want to at least split it between freshmen and sophomores. So, but yeah, we can get that.
I'm just asking. I think that's a legit question, and because you got to figure that out. That's going to be a big part of it.
Yeah.
Big part of it.
I have one more, as we all, I guess it's a food for thought thing tonight, as my kids are taking their, you know, planning their courses and stuff. Frankie was super excited as a junior to have early dismissal. And man, next year this kid's trying to take as little classes as possible. I want, at the end of this, kids all the way through their senior year to want to be in our buildings for 8 years, because we have that many classes for them to take, but they can't get enough of it. You know, like when you go through a museum and it's 4:30 and it closes at 5 and you're trying to hurry up and read the last like 8 things to get out of the museum before it closes?
You're one of those people.
I am one of those people. But I got there at 10 a.m. I
You go-
spend
you
there
go
all
with-
day.
You go with Mary, you'd be there for 3 days.
I just need to consume it all. But
What do you think that stuff is there for?
it's
To
It's a
read
scam.
and to
It's a
learn.
scam.
But it's our job when they come to us as preschoolers, then KLA, and then kindergarten, to prepare them to want to consume all of that. And I think we've done a really good job of getting them there. in those younger grades, especially now under this leadership, and, you know, thankfully our board has supported a lot of their stuff. I want them to have that all the way through the end. I don't want kids to be like, ooh, I only got to take 4 classes next year. I want them to want to be there and to gobble up as much of it as they can, and I feel like that, at the end of it, if I could put a bow on what my goal is at the end of it, it's gonna be that. That I want to have the education for them, the best education available for them to consume at the end of this process.
I think that's a great vision that we all share.
Anything else, anybody?
See you tomorrow, friends.
Thank
Sounds
you,
good.
thank you for all the
Thank you.
Adjourn this meeting?
Yes, I am going to. That's what I was asking Ruth. All right, so I move to adopt resolution 2022-03-95 to adjourn this meeting.
Second,
We have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2022-03-95. Roll call, Mr. Nucio.
Mr. Vaughn.
Yes.
Mrs. Carpus.
yes.
Mrs. Bratz.
Yes.
Mr. Ruda.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.